Robert Sims has spent 3 seasons burying bodies for other people's secrets, and now Silo Season 3 Episode 9 might be the episode where he finally pays for it himself. This is Silo Season 3, Episode 9, titled Farewell, and the title alone should be setting off alarm bells for anyone who's been rooting for him. Let's start with a piece of information that changes everything about how we should be reading this episode. Apple TV has confirmed that Episode 9 is officially called Farewell. Not Reckoning. Not the announcement. Farewell. That word choice is not accidental in a show that has spent 3 seasons treating titles as quiet spoilers, and it immediately narrows down what kind of episode we're about to watch. Someone is leaving. The only real debate is who, and whether leaving means walking away or being sent outside to clean. The official synopsis backs this up without giving away the ending. It reads simply that the entire silo is stunned by an announcement from Camille, while Daniel and Helen attend a special event back in the before times. On the surface, that's a vague, almost boring sentence. But context makes it heavy. Camille Sims is currently the head of IT, sitting in the seat once occupied by Bernard, and she has spent this entire season proving that she will choose the survival of the silo's 9,913 residents over almost anything else, including her own marriage. When someone with that kind of authority makes an announcement big enough to stun an entire underground population of nearly 10,000 people, that isn't a policy update. That's a body count, a memory wipe, or both. Here's where the story actually stands heading into this episode, and it's worth laying out clearly because Episode 8, Grey Goo, moved a lot of pieces at once. Juliet Nichols is no longer free. After a rescue plan involving Sandy posing as a judicial supervisor went sideways, Juliet was arrested and thrown into a holding cell, and the person waiting for her inside that cell is Robert Sims. That detail matters enormously because it means the two people best positioned to actually stop what's coming, the woman who understands the safeguard threat and the man who has spent the season quietly working against Judicial from the inside, are now locked in a room together with nothing to do but talk. And Robert Sims talking is never just Robert Sims talking. This is a man who murdered no one, contrary to what the show wanted us to believe for the first 4 episodes. That reveal alone reshapes everything happening now. Back in Episode 4, viewers learned that Sims never actually killed Bernard Holland, despite an entire flashback built to convince us otherwise. He faked the execution, used a decoy, and hid Bernard alive deep in the Digger Void, all while letting Camille and the rest of Judicial believe the former mayor was dead. Why go through that much risk, that much lying to his own wife, for a man he supposedly hated? Because Bernard knew something about the safeguard protocol that nobody else did, and Sims understood that keeping him alive might be the only leverage anyone had left. That single decision means Robert Sims has been playing a much longer, much riskier game than Camille has ever given him credit for. And it explains the tension that's been building between them all season. Camille is not just his wife anymore. She's his superior, she's the one enforcing the algorithm's orders, and she is the one person in the silo capable of ending his life with a single command. Their marriage, which the show spent 2 seasons building as an unbreakable partnership, has quietly become one of the most dangerous relationships in Silo 18, precisely because both of them now know things the other doesn't, and both of them are terrified of what happens if that gap in knowledge gets exposed. So when the synopsis says Camille is about to make an announcement that stuns the entire silo, the most immediate, most personal question isn't about policy. It's about whether that announcement involves her own husband. Sims spent Episode 8 becoming, almost jarringly, the softest version of himself we've ever seen, comforting his son Anthony, holding onto a small relic the boy handed him like it was the last normal thing left in his world. That's not typically how the show writes a character right before handing them a quiet, uneventful outcome. When Silo slows down to show you a father memorizing a moment with his son, it is usually because the show is about to take that moment away. Meanwhile, the threat hanging over every decision Camille makes has a name, and it's worse than most viewers initially assumed. The algorithm has been pushing her toward a full-scale memory wipe of the entire population, using a chemical compound the show calls vitamin D+, pumped directly into the water supply. If deployed, it would reset every resident back to 0, erasing all memory of Juliet, the rebellion, and everything anyone has learned about the world outside. Camille has hesitated, not out of mercy for the population, but because triggering it would mean losing pieces of her own identity along with everyone else's. That hesitation is the only thing standing between Silo 18 and total erasure, and Episode 9 is exactly the kind of penultimate hour where hesitation runs out. If Camille's storyline is the emotional gut punch of this episode, the before-time sequence with Daniel and Helen is the slow-burn mystery running underneath it, and Episode 8 already handed us the missing piece that makes everything about the Silo project make sense. For most of the season, viewers only knew that 50 underground silos were being built somewhere in Georgia, funded and driven by a tech billionaire named Per Stenson. What Episode 8 finally revealed is why. Stenson and Senator Thurmond sat down with Daniel and Helen over dinner and laid out the real threat: nanotechnology weapons, credible fears of an Iranian strike, and a doomsday scenario the show refers to as Grey Goo, a nanotech disaster capable of consuming everything in its path. The 50 Silo project wasn't a bunker for the wealthy. It was framed as humanity's insurance policy against an extinction event that Stenson and Thurmond genuinely believed was coming. That context reframes the special event that Daniel and Helen are set to attend in Episode 9. Given everything Episode 8 just revealed, this almost certainly is not a casual social gathering. It has the shape of an unveiling, a formal presentation of the Silo project to a wider circle, possibly investors, government officials, or future Silo leadership. Helen has already shown she isn't the type to sit quietly through a presentation she has doubts about. Her background is journalism. Her instincts run toward the Washington Post reporter she used to be, and she has already pushed back hard against Stenson's methods once this season. If she's dressed up and standing in a room built to celebrate the Silo project, the far more interesting question is what she does once she's inside it, and whether her presence there is voluntary, or something closer to damage control by people who don't fully trust her anymore. There's a darker layer worth sitting with here, too. Everything the show has built around Silo life depends on population-wide amnesia, whether it's the memory-wiping vitamin D+ circulating in Silo 18's water, or the total erasure of pre-Silo history that every resident grows up accepting as normal. If Helen and Daniel are present at the literal founding ceremony of this project, their storyline may be quietly setting up the origin of that erasure policy, showing viewers the exact moment the architects of the silos decided forgetting the past wasn't a side effect, it was the plan. Back inside Silo 18, the mechanics of stopping Camille and the algorithm are just as tense and just as fragile. Thanks to information that Patrick Kennedy uncovered from digging through Silo 17's ruins, Juliet's allies now understand something critical. The reason Silo 17 fell silent decades ago was tied to Jimmy's mother, who sacrificed herself in order to physically seal off the same toxic pipe system that threatens Silo 18 today. That discovery gives Shirley Campbell, Knox, and Martha Walker an actual blueprint for stopping the safeguard protocol from being triggered here. The problem is that following that blueprint likely means someone has to do exactly what Jimmy's mother did: put themselves in a cleaning suit, walk into a lethal environment, and physically disable the pipe from the outside, knowing there may be no way back in. That single detail changes how we should be watching the countdown toward Camille's announcement. It's no longer just a question of whether she'll order a cleaning as punishment. It's a question of whether Juliet's own allies are about to volunteer someone for a suicide mission just to buy the Silo more time. Shirley in particular has been positioned as the one racing against the clock this entire back half of the season, first helping Juliet get captured on purpose so she herself could escape and keep working, and now carrying the weight of Kennedy's discovery with almost nobody left to share the burden with. If Episode 9 is the episode that forces her hand, that decision alone could be the emotional gut punch that Farewell is named after, entirely separate from whatever happens to Robert Sims. And that brings us back to the holding cell, because Juliet and Sims being locked up together isn't just a plot inconvenience. It's the show deliberately putting its two most defiant characters in a room with nothing but time and shared enemies. Sims has spent 3 seasons enforcing the pact on behalf of Judicial, but everything he's done since faking Bernard's death suggests a man who no longer believes in the system he's supposed to represent. Juliet, meanwhile, is the only person confirmed to understand enough about the safeguard protocol to potentially stop it without triggering it by accident. If those two spend this episode actually talking instead of posturing, the alliance that forms in that cell could end up mattering more than anything Camille announces publicly. It would also be a quietly devastating twist, considering Sims spent season 1 treating Juliet as an enemy of the state and may now be the one person willing to trust her with everything he knows. So, where does all of this actually land when episode 9 plays out? Let's put the pieces together, because separately they're tense, but together they point towards something much bigger than a single character's fate. Camille is holding the power to erase an entire population's memory, and she is running out of reasons to hesitate. Robert Sims is locked in a cell with the one person who might actually be able to stop the safeguard protocol, and his loyalty has already proven itself unpredictable in exactly the way that terrifies Judicial. Shirley and Kennedy now have a working blueprint for disabling the pipe, but that blueprint appears to demand a sacrifice eerily similar to the one that doomed Silo 17 decades ago. And somewhere in the before times, Daniel and Helen are standing inside what may be the literal origin point of the lie that built every silo, watching history get rewritten in real time before it's ever handed down to the people who'll live underground because of it. An episode titled Farewell, sitting in this exact spot, one episode before the season finale, is not subtle. Silo has used episode titles as quiet confirmation before, and this one reads less like a metaphor and more like a promise. Someone is being said goodbye to. Whether that's a character walking outside in a cleaning suit, a character choosing to disappear the way Bernard once did, or a version of a character's memory being wiped clean while their body stays behind. The show has 3 genuinely devastating options on the table, and the most unsettling part is that none of them feel like a stretch given where every storyline currently sits. What makes this moment hit harder than an average penultimate episode is how far these characters have traveled to get here. Robert Sims began this series as the Silo's enforcer, a man willing to threaten and intimidate in the name of order, someone viewers were conditioned to distrust from his very first scene. Watching him spend this season protecting Bernard in secret, comforting his son over a smuggled relic, and now sitting across from Juliet in a cell with nothing left to hide behind, is one of the more quietly remarkable transformations this show has pulled off. If Farewell is his episode, it won't feel like justice. It'll feel like watching a man finally become the person he should have been years too late to save himself. And Camille's side of this is just as tragic in its own way, maybe more so. She isn't a villain acting out of cruelty. She's a woman who watched the algorithm choose her over her own husband, who has spent every episode since trying to prove that choice wasn't a mistake, and who now holds the literal power to erase the memories of everyone she's sworn to protect, including the memory of the man she married. Every version of the big announcement, the synopsis, is hinting at involves her losing something irreplaceable, whether it's her husband, her sense of self, or the last bit of trust the Silo has left in her leadership. There's no outcome here where Camille walks away from this episode unscarred, and that's exactly what makes her one of the most compelling characters in the entire season. That's ultimately what separates Silo from a lot of other prestige sci-fi right now. This isn't a show that needs a monster or a villain twirling a mustache to generate tension. It's built its entire final stretch around ordinary people making impossible choices with incomplete information, trusting the wrong person, sacrificing themselves for a pipe or a memory or a marriage, and never being entirely sure if it was the right call until it's already too late to take it back. Whatever Farewell actually shows us, it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt because we've spent 3 seasons understanding exactly why these people are making the choices they're making. There are still loose threads worth watching closely heading into this episode too. What happens to Patrick Kennedy and Lucas Kyle once their information from Silo 17 gets put into action? Whether Solo makes it back to Silo 18 at all, and whether Bernard, still alive and still hidden, decides this is finally the moment to reveal himself rather than keep operating in the shadows while everyone around him risks their lives without the full picture he's been sitting on. Any one of those threads could end up being the emotional core of the finale that follows. So that's everything worth knowing heading into Silo Season 3, Episode 9, Farewell. An episode that, based on everything the show is built toward, might genuinely be the most gutting hour of the entire season, finale included. If this breakdown helped you make sense of where all these storylines are headed, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want the full breakdown the moment this episode actually airs, and drop a comment letting me know who you think Farewell is really about, because I have a feeling a lot of us are about to be wrong. See you in the next one.